Hi, so today I'll be talking about basic syntax in Python, and I know many of you are aware of some of the Python concepts by now, but I think syntax is good to review always because not everyone remembers all the syntax, and this is like kind of a separate discussion from like actual concepts like, oh, what is a variable, oh, what is a loop, because I won't be like specifically talking about every single one of those things. I'll just be talking about certain things that are kind of like unique, or how things are written in Python, not like going over exact concepts. And syntax is very important because in Python, um, Python is like meant to be like a teaching language in the beginning, I believe. So it has like much simpler syntax than most languages, and that's why beginners like to use it. And it's even called like, oh, pseudocode, or like similar to pseudocode, in that it's very easy to write. So it's much easier to understand syntax in Python. So it's good to like know all of it, I guess. And you don't have to spend as much time on it. So something that the first thing that we'll be talking about is comments. So comments are universal. Every language has them because they're useful for providing some kind of information about the code. Like for example, if you're giving the code to someone, you might add a comment on what the specific part does. So if they want to edit it, they know what they can like they want to edit, for example. So a comment is simply denoted by the hashtag, and as you can see, like I did in the title, but if you have the hashtag there, everything is like gray, which means that it's not going to be executed, and it's going to be a comment. So yeah, comments, you kind of just leave like a note there, I guess, right? And you can do it like after a like a code you want to execute, for example, like print hello world, and then afterwards you can add a comment saying like, oh, this prints hello world. So what this does is it only does the print hello world, and this is just like a comment, it doesn't execute that. So that's what a comment is. So another thing that's important in any language is like how to like end a statement, I guess. So in many languages you have to add uh like this kind of thing, right? Like a semicolon, but it's not a requirement in Python. You can simply just end it, and as long as you go to the next line, then the program knows that you're doing something else. Now let's say um, hello world 2. So it will first execute the first line and then separately execute the second line. So it knows that after you um, went to the next line, then you ended the first statement. So it will execute the first and second statements independently. But however, if you want to combine statements, right? You want to have a statement in two lines for some reason. You can just add a slash. So an example of this would be, right? And then you add a slash, and it knows that you're trying to continue it. So it will still count X as both of these lines rather than just the first line. So if you print X now, then it will have all 8 of these numbers added, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, rather than just 1, 2, 3, 4, as you can see here, 36. So you can also use a semicolon. I think I talked about semicolons earlier, how that they're not required, but you can use them to like end the statement. Um, so I'm not going to run anything for this one, but I can just show an example. So for example, if you want to do like x equals 1, but then you don't want to like go to the second line and say like y equals 2. This is like a one way to write it, right? You can combine them into like one line just by doing x equal a equals 1 and then b equals 2, right? That's the same thing as the first two statements, except you added a semicolon, so you can like combine them into one line. Well, no one does that, but or like not very many people do that, but I guess that could be useful if you're trying to like condense space, or like you have like a line requirement, line um, limit in like a test or something. Next is like indentation, which is very important because indentation tells you what a certain like it kind of indicates code blocks. So in loops, it tells you what is executed under the loop, for example. So let's say for I in range. So everyone, we all know, we've learned already what a loop is, right? So if it automatically indents for us actually in Python in this in Kaggle, but in general, you want to indent after declaring the loop. So this is like the statement. So like this is like a for statement which loops or which runs whatever code is underneath the statement until this expression is like done, right? So or like and it loops it until the expression is no longer true. So um, let's say we just want to like print I, right? So if we want to do another thing under this loop, let's say we want to print hot by this time, then we have to have both underneath indented underneath the for statement because then we know that these two things are underneath the loop. However, if we want to do an action after the loop, then we delete the indentation and sorry, one time because these two are so yeah, this is done outside of the loop, and since these two, let me just run it and show you. Oh shoot, sorry, 1 second. So now now we see that the high and by loop twice because um our for loop loops twice given the expression. So I in range 2 means it loops 2 times. And then these two both loop 2 times because it's within the for loop. But the last statement only looped 1 time because it's outside of it. So that's what indentation does. So yeah, you don't. So in other languages, um, these loops and the actions underneath loops can be indicated by other things such as like curly braces in C. I've seen that. However, in Python, it's just indentation because it's a lot easier to read and write. So I think they made it this way for ease. So another thing that I can talk about is like white space inside code, which doesn't matter. So some people have different coding styles. Like some people just don't put spaces ever, right? Some people put a lot of like put spaces after like every single character, which I think is a little weird, but some people do that. And then you could also just like have a lot of white space, right? And this they all the white space is just ignored. So this is just x equals 1 plus 2. This is y equals 2 plus 3. This is just z equals 1 plus 2. So yeah, you can write it any way. However, obviously organization is important in coding. So I would recommend writing it in the first way, or even the second way is fine, but not having excessive spacing. So yeah, the next thing we'll talk about is parentheses, and parentheses is just for grouping. So if you do like 1 times, this is just like math, right? 1 times 2 plus 3, then it'll execute the thing in the parentheses first as a group and then do the other action. So it's like just PEMDAS. Or it can indicate like a function is being called, and then within the parentheses is like what you're performing a function on. So if you print hello world, that means that you are executing the print function on whatever is inside the parentheses. Um, yeah, and that's about it. That's like the basic syntax. Some things you should remember that might help you on your way. And yeah, it's not any like core knowledge, but I think it's important to know all your syntax.